And we're live. All right. Today we're talking about multiple offers, specifically how to win in a multiple offer situation. We're joined by two amazing live agents who've helped many clients successfully navigate through multiple offers, Deidre Harrison and Tonya Brown. If you're watching and you have questions, post them in the comments below and we'll be happy to answer them. So to start off, could you give us an idea why multiple offers are such a hot topic right now? Tell us what's happening in the real estate market in the Edmonton area.
Who wants to go? Who wants to go?
My dog's barking, so that's honestly, right now we have super low inventory. So with demand being regular or maybe a little bit higher, it means that there are fewer homes for people to look at and people to purchase, which results in multiple offers and more people kind of attracted to that same home. So you're competing against them.
A huge difference from last April, right?
Massive.
Last April, market was down 50%. This April, this March, we were up 105%. Our office was up 150%. So lots of activity. So we know there's lots of multiple offers going on. We've had lots of questions. We've even had some posted now about, their personal experiences. We were talking earlier and you were talking about kind of your strategy for dealing with multiple offers, and it's not a win-lose mentality. So do you want to kind of explain what it is that you go through with your clients?
For sure. I feel like with multiple offers, there's quite a bit more prep work. Even though there's prep work for all offers, when you're competing against other offers and you have no idea what they've written or who they are or anything like that, I really want my clients to stand out. I don't want them just to be another package of paper on a table being reviewed by the seller. So we make sure that we have information from their lender saying that they're qualified to purchase that property or pre-approved to purchase that property, as well as personal letter. Generally, we try and find little bits and pieces from either viewing the home or through conversations with me and the agent so they can really personalize that letter to the homeowners. So it's kind of like they're—
You've got a great example of that with regards to the two children and the agent that didn't even know he was telling you stuff. Why don't you just explain that and then I'll go to Tonya.
Yeah. So I was shopping with a young couple. They were first-time home buyers. And I was chatting with the agent prior to writing the offer, just kind of finding out whether or not there was any disclosures or like a couple of different things. And he started just talking about how the owners had two children and this was a family home for them. They had been there for approximately 10 years, all of this kind of stuff. And so in my conversation with my clients, they picked up on that. And in their letter, they talked about the two children they wanted to have and how they wanted to raise those children in the home. And they really connected with the seller. Just a little update on that. The seller left a personal letter in the inspection.
Oh, that's awesome.
For my clients. So, it really humanized the contract and brought those two parties together, as far as I'm concerned, in a win-win situation, not a us win all situation, right?
Those personal connections are so important. They're actually also very important for the seller who needs to know they've got a deal that's going to go forward. Tonya, can you talk a little bit about the personal connection side? And you've also talked to me about clean offers. And just so people know, like, we're not just spitballing like a couple of rookies here. There's about 60 plus years of experience sitting around this camera. So there's a lot of experience and know-how. So talk to us about some personal connection stuff and clean offers. And what does a clean offer mean?
For sure. So I would definitely say clean offers means not asking for things like the furnace and ducts to be cleaned. We don't want to be adding other chatels like normally you see the appliances are included. You don't want to ask for the TV and the wall mount. You want to keep everything as simple as possible. Same thing with D. I had a story just from last week where my client, we just happened to find out over the phone, me talking to the listing agent, that his client was a corrections officer. And it just turned out that it made sense for us to disclose to them that my client was in the military. And whether or not that set us apart, we did end up winning. So just being able to find that common ground with the other party can help.
Sometimes that really means that you as an agent have to be really listening. So your agent has to be very engaged and sometimes calm to just hear what's going on.
Absolutely.
Have you got any examples of agents really going above and beyond to get their offer accepted?
To get their offer accepted, yeah. I mean, same with what Dee said. What I've done with clients in the past who are wanting to buy this home to start a family, writing that letter out really makes a difference, and makes you stand out to, maybe the other offers that were just submitted without any info about that buyer.
We've had some situations with poor communication. So I think maybe Dee, you can elaborate on that in terms of like the agents not even calling the.
Yeah, I mean, when you're on the other side, I mean, I guess poor communication can happen both from the buyer's agent to the listing agent or the listing agent to the buyer's agent. Oftentimes when you are the listing agent and you don't hear from the other agent, you can't pick up, how serious they are or how capable they're going to be to bring the transaction through the end or what have you. You just kind of get an email. Sometimes not even a text, checking to make sure that you've received the email, and that kind of stuff. Again, it's important to be memorable in a good way to the listing agent as well, right? Because, the reality is that we are there as guides for our clients. And if we can't remember who you are, or we can only remember who the agent is because, I don't know, they were the only one that didn't communicate, right? Sometimes that can be an issue as well.
So people wouldn't necessarily know whether their agent actually even called the listing agent. I guess they just have to ask, what is your plan?
What is your strategy?
What is your strategy? How will you help us?
I think a lot of the times, if you are doing like that pre-approval letter and that special important letter, most of those agents are calling the other agent, right? Like when you're building out a package to present to the other side, I would say like 9 times out of 10, 97% of the time, those agents are for sure calling the other agent and having a conversation, right? So I think that would be a really good indicator for people as to whether or not that's happening.
A couple of things I've read about agents actually sending photos of their clients possibly in front of the house or with their family and pets and that sort of stuff. And I actually heard of an agent that had a professionally produced video made of their clients talking about why they love the house and submitted that with their offer. And this was in the States where they're getting 20 and 30 offers sometimes on properties, and they actually weren't the best offer and they were able to win with that.
Yeah. And it isn't always about the money for the seller. And so that's where it comes in with those personal connections. What other things might tip it for it not being just about the money?
Possession date.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really big one, especially, and that's why it's, again, so important to be touching and getting a good communication line going with the listing agent to find out what's that ideal possession date for the seller. Have they found a house yet? Do they want this to happen quickly? We want to get that info ahead of time so we can make sure we give them exactly what they want for the possession date, if we're able to, because I've won many in the past because our possession date was better.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it doesn't always come down to just price.
Yeah, or at least won the opportunity to continue the conversation, right? Because I find a lot of times the possession is so important that even if you're not the highest number, or even if you're not going to win with your offer written the way that it is, you'll get that phone call, right? And they'll be like, look, your possession is super important to us. You gave us the possession date. Can we just tweak a couple things here and there, right? And then call it a deal, right? At least it's enough to like draw someone in to get that phone call. Because that's another thing that I say to agents all the time. Call me.
Yeah.
Right? I remember the first multiple offer I ever competed in. He was like, well, no. Like, we're just going to pick one. I was like, no. Like, call me. Right?
Yeah. And from a seller's agent's perspective, they've got multiple offers and they're trying to give their clients advice about which is the best one. And generally, if there's a few offers, they're only going to pick 2 to deal with, like to maybe see about the possession and so forth. So there are certain situations where people don't want to compete. How would you advise them if they're not wanting to even get into the multiple offer? Because that's got to be part of the conversation going in, because not everybody wants to be in a multiple offer situation. How do you deal with that? And who wants to take that lead? Tonya, do you?
Sure. I definitely, as soon as I start working with someone, we talk about scenarios right off the get-go. And I let them know this is the type of market that we're in. You know, are you prepared to, if you find the home that you love, but you don't want to compete, are you prepared to put in a really strong offer that the seller can't refuse?
Okay, so just kind of going in first and saying, here's where we are, we love your home.
Yeah.
And but you've got to be quick on it. What about the properties that have been sitting for a while?
You know, those ones are kind of like, can almost feel like a bait and switch, because sometimes you feel like you've got all the time in the world with them because they've been hanging out for a while. And then you go in, you fall in love with it, and all of a sudden there's like 6 other people that are in love with it, right? The part about that, I think, is that we're all thinking it's too good to be true, right? Like we're like, yeah, we can negotiate on this one, right? And then there's, you know, 6 other of us feeling the same way. I mean, in those situations, when a property's been on the market a long time, I feel like the really, really hard, short deadlines on the contracts are more useful, because usually those sellers are feeling quite a bit of pain. You're in a super busy, hot market, and yet you've sat for 90 days. That hurts, right? Yeah. Like that hurts a lot. And so if you write a really good, respectable offer and you're like, you have 4 hours, right?
Yeah. So you're really trying to just shorten the time frame that they have to respond to you for the best interest of your buyer client.
Yeah, so that brings us into, we were talking the other day about, is it better to be the first offer or the second offer, or, you know, what's your advice around that? I think these doorbell rang, so
yeah, go ahead, Tonya.
The joys of working from home.
Right. I guess I would say that, you know, you might feel that if you're the first offer in, that you can start lower, which in a different market, sure, absolutely. But in this market, if the property comes on and it shows well, it's probably going to sell quickly, then we don't want to be coming in too low, because as soon as offer number 2 comes in and it looks way better than your offer that came in, you know, maybe 10,000 under asking, you've just made that second offer look a lot better than yours.
Yeah, and I from my own experience, just always being the second offer, you almost always had an advantage because you knew that there was an offer already. So you went in knowing you were competing, and the first offer always didn't have that option or understanding that they were going to end up in competition. Yeah, sure. So Dee mentioned something about number of offers, and I'm going to touch on that in a second about different thresholds of different numbers of offers. But in many cases, if you aren't successful, you're as a buyer's agent, you're asked to go into a backup offer position, which means you would be the next up. Is that a good idea? What's involved in that? What are some of the risks? So Dee, you want to take that since you...
You bet. Since I had to run and throw my dog. Yeah. I thought I'd put the barky one down there, and then the other one started barking, which kind of threw me off a little bit. But with regards to backup positions, in all honesty, even though I deal with the option to do that a lot, most of my clients don't want to, once I've kind of explained what that looks like. And if they did want to, making sure that they can release themselves from that contract if needed, if they find something else, right? The first contract has really short conditions. Let's say we're going to know in 4 days. We're probably okay. I still want that release term, but we're likely okay. If it's like a regular pending period, like 7 to 10 business days, in the real estate world, so much can happen during that time. Yeah. And you don't want them stuck in a contract that they don't want to be in anymore, because the better house,
has come up.
2 blocks down, and they can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah, that's a fair comment. Tonya, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
For sure. And maybe people watching right now don't understand and just think maybe, well, we can just go write an offer on another house. And unfortunately, if your backup offer became offer number 1 on this first house, you're contractually obligated to follow through with that offer.
Yes.
You'd be not in a good position if you've got 2 offers accepted on 2 homes and you're expected to buy both of those houses.
And unless you've written a rescission clause like
Exactly.
he was talking about, which I've written a lot of lately. So that, that's.
Yeah.
Yep. We also have a question.
Yeah, we actually have a question from Instagram. So Ryder Nuck 9 asked, what about sale of home clauses? He says that he or she has lost twice now in multiple offers with the sale of home clause.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Well, that is a tough one. I think, Dee, you've had success once on that. I'll weigh in later, but go ahead, Dee, and explain why.
Sure. I really don't like telling people that something is absolutely not possible. Like, I try and remove that from my vocabulary because I've seen all kinds of crazy things that shouldn't happen in the state. One of which was I actually did win one time with a sale of a buyer's home condition on a property. It was not in this market, though. It was in a market where things were not flying off the shelves.
That's a really good point. All the advice that we're giving today is about the current market that we're in. It doesn't apply to every, Sorry to cut you off there, but
we weren't seeing multiples very often. First of all, I was shocked that we were even in multiples. And then, I couldn't believe that we were competing with a sale of a buyer's home condition. And then I couldn't believe even more that we had won. And we
because the other property had a sale of home buyer's condition, right?
Did, right? And of course, we don't know that when we go into it. But the challenge with our market right now is even if you were to find yourself in that position where by fluke, all 3 of you had sale of a buyer home conditions and you happened to be the one that won, if that property was able to generate 3 offers as quickly as they have been, chances are another one will come in. And as a buyer's agent, if there's a sale of a buyer's home condition, I treat it as active.
Yes.
I'm 100% prepared to bump you, right? So it's...
Yeah, no one's going to be afraid to write on a sale of home unless the condition for the sale of home, like they've already got an offer on it and they're removing that condition. It's only 3 days.
Yeah.
So
even if you manage to get your sale of home offer accepted, the chances of it actually completing are very, very.
But there are some strategies. I mean, you can get your home on the market and, once you have an offer on your home, then you could engage in an offer with the other side and negotiate 2 offers simultaneously. There are options for a guaranteed home sale. There are some financing options that, certain brokerages like ours are willing to look at for their clients as well. So there are different things that can transpire that could help you, but not necessarily with that clause. Sure. There are some workarounds, I guess, is the better answer.
I would also just say, really have a conversation with your agent, because the sale of a buyer's home condition, explaining it out loud, walking through the process is super confusing. Yeah. So I've been finding for a lot of my clients, I actually have to get that schedule out and walk through all of the things that are dependent on the last thing in order to really get a clear picture as to why it doesn't work in this market. Right?
Okay.
Talk about how you coach your clients with regards to risk thresholds.
Tonya? I can, but I was just chatting for a while.
You guys are so you must have come into the business at the same time.
I think the whole idea around this is you have to really know your clients and how much risk they're willing to take in the transaction. And it's quite important in this type of a market right now to take a little bit more of a risk, right? I don't know what else to add to that, but.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that we were chatting a little bit earlier about process risk thresholds, I guess you could say. So, like, are you going to sell your home before you buy your next home? Can you hold both homes? What would that realistically look like? And the conversations I have with my clients a lot is, these are your options. What is within your risk threshold? Because it could be very different than mine, right? I base a lot of my decisions off of comfort, right? So I might be more willing to fire sale my first home after I've already bought my second home to make sure I don't have to pay 2 mortgages. But if I had to, I could, right?
Right.
There's other people that doesn't work for them because it's terrifying, right?
Yeah, and the stress at night just going to sleep is pretty tough.
100%.
And then the emotional attachments and so many factors come into play.
Yep. So creating a strategy that is within your risk threshold that will still match this current market, right?
I think you raised something that's very important that I know you both do. You give lots of information to your clients and you give them options and you let them decide. It's not like, here, this is your only option, because there are multiple options to look at in a multiple offer strategy. And it really should be the client who's driving the bus on that.
Yeah.
But they should have all the information.
I think that's the hard part for some people, is they can't see the outcome, right? So it's our job to show you, this is your options. This is what could potentially happen. Here's the scenario. Are you comfortable with the end result of that scenario?
Yeah. And I will touch on, because we brought it up, risk and escalation clauses. And I won't talk a lot about it. I'm just going to say that
what is an escalation clause?
Well, an escalation clause is basically where you're going to tell the buyer or the seller that you're going to pay whatever the highest offer is plus another, whatever amount, $1,000 more or $3,000 more. There are some risks in that. I mean, obviously, you might be feeling comfortable if you think it's only going to be $5,000 more. And if it's only going to, in some cases, it could be, $5,000 over list price. It could end up being $50,000 over list price. So you might build a cap into that. And as a seller's agent, I look at that cap and I say, well, that's what they're willing to pay. So we go right to that. We don't even waste time worrying about what the other offers are. And it's like, if you want it, that's the price. But as a seller, those offers can also be very risky, because a lot of times the buyer hasn't articulated what they're paying or going to have to pay. And then they get the cold feet because they didn't think about it. And then they use whatever contingencies they have in place to maybe wiggle out of it. So there's a lot of risk both for the buyer and the seller. And you need to have, if you're doing them, someone who's very skilled and well versed in it to walk those areas. And other issues, but that's enough on the escalation clause.
Sheldon, though, you brought up a really good point where you were talking about almost giving too much information, right? Mm-hmm. So, letting them know what your cap is. And then all of a sudden, most listing agents would be like, oh, well, then we're going there.
Yeah.
We're pushing that by $1,000, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the balances that I find a lot of the times when I'm representing a buyer is giving enough information so that it paints a really positive picture of my clients, but not too much. Like, if my clients are pre-approved up to $550,000 and we're competing up to $450,000, that is absolutely not going on the pre-approval letter. You don't get to know that we're pre-approved $100,000 over what we're offering, because it doesn't serve my clients at all. And all it does is start the wheels on the other side of how much they can move that up, right?
Fair.
Excellent point.
Yeah, and a year ago, as the broker, I'm seeing deposits coming in for, in the $300,000 to $500,000 price range of maybe $5,000, maybe $10,000. Tonya, what are those deposits looking like today?
Much higher.
Much higher. We're talking, what, 20, 30, sometimes 40. Again,
you're trying to stand out from the rest, right?
Yeah.
I think another thing I want to add about this escalation clause piece is that buyers are having remorse right now too, paying a lot of money in these multiple offers. So you risk that too with the escalation clause of them wanting to get out of it after.
As a seller, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a risky proposition, because as a seller, you don't necessarily ever get to recreate the magic of just coming on new and having people compete for your property. So it's a very risky time for a seller as well.
So before we sign off, is there anything you guys would like to add? Any final thoughts about multiple offers?
Top tips for sellers or buyers or both?
So my top tip for buyers is honestly humanize that contract as much as possible. Make it so that you have a young couple with their first kids sitting in that seller's kitchen instead of a piece of paper, right? And then just clean it up, right? Like all of those things that are truly not important that you can deal with yourself, don't put them in, don't even bring them up, right? Like just clean it up. That would be pretty much my go-to.
I would also add that, because we didn't really touch on it too much, electronic signing. Because, hey, what you're offering, I'm telling my clients, you need to be next to your phone because maybe another offer is coming in a half an hour and then another one. And we're having to change our strategy every time a new offer comes in. You better answer your phone.
if you want to compete.
Yeah, and be ready to sign whenever.
But if you don't, just get out of the way and let the others who do.
Oh, that's a good one too. Like,
yeah.
If you're not really going to participate in this process, like just back out, because really all you're doing is inflating the eventual sale price of the home, which is going to bring up the price of the other homes that you're going to be looking at.
Yeah, because I said we'd talk about it later, but we didn't. And there is tiers of the number of offers.
That's right. Yeah.
1 to 3 offers, 5 to 10. You're going to see different escalations in how much the prices go up based on the number of offers.
Absolutely.
So any other, my last one would be, make sure your agent's a good listener, a good communicator like you both are. You're excellent communicators. You're able to adapt to the information and situations. So I think that's really important, so that your client understands what it is that's going on and you're able to convey what they want as well.
Yeah. And whether they have good relationships with the other agents that are out there, right? It really helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I will say that when you're choosing your agent, this is what I tell everybody, whether they work with me or not, you must pick somebody that you trust. Oh. And it's been true the whole way through, but like when you're dealing in multiple offer scenarios and agents are doing so much acting on your behalf in very high stress, ever changing situations, you have to trust your agent.
Yeah.
You just have to trust them.
Yeah.
So find one that you can trust.
Excellent point.
And I'm very fortunate that we have a great group of people that, we're focused on the consumer. We don't have sales awards. So we're not really focused on doing the next transaction. We're focused on building the relationship with our clients. So I think that's a better spot to be in when you're advising people versus how am I going to get this to be a sale? So I think with that, there's a lot more to this conversation. Like we could just go on for hours. Keep turning this around, but I think, no one's going to want to sit and listen for that long. I think we've given some great information, and I mean, people are always welcome to reach out to you and get some more of your insights. You guys both have a tremendous amount of experience. Thank you for sharing it with everybody. We really appreciate it, and have a great day.
Love where you live.
Love where you live.
Guys.